Hi. How long does it take to pass your ADI exams? For most people, it's around about 8 to 18 months, but let's find out how one training instructor did it in just 6 weeks. If you're a PDI or a newly qualified ADI, then there's one channel you absolutely need to check out on YouTube, and that's Mirror's Signal Podcast, hosted by Josh Hollerand. If you want to find it, just check out the link in the information below. Josh has previously interviewed me on his podcast, and I'm sure we're going to have future chats. But the episode that I want to focus on today is with a driving instructor, or a trainee at that time, who managed to complete his Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3 in just 6 weeks, which is mind-blowing. In this video, I've taken out some key highlights from the full interview, which I think are important to comment on. But if you want to watch the full episode with Josh and Miz, then again, check out the link in the information below. It's a fascinating and really interesting and inspiring watch. So let's jump into the video now and join Josh and Miz.
Well, I think it might surprise a few people when we say why it's all a bit of a blur and why we maybe can't remember at what stage we spoke to each other, because we was just chatting before we started recording and looking at dates. And you went from Part 1 to Part 3 in about 6 weeks. Is that right?
It is right, yeah. I couldn't remember myself. I thought it was 2 or 3 months, but it wasn't. It was about 6 weeks, yeah.
How have you managed that? How have you gone from passing a Part 1 to passing a Part 3 in 2 calendar months, basically?
I don't know is the answer, but I think more a case of hard work and dedication. That's what it was. I just sort of just took the ball by the horns and went for it.
Okay, so here's the first important point I think Miz makes. So what he did when he decided to become a driving instructor was he really dedicated himself to his study and his practice. Unfortunately, a lot of driving schools out there make it sound like they're almost going to give you a plug-and-play type of solution, which means all you need to do is just turn up for your training, and that's going to guarantee you to pass your ADI exams. And unfortunately, life just isn't that way. Unless you are like Miz and put in the dedication, the study, and the practice, you simply won't get there. And in this next clip, we're going to look at how Miz went about preparing for his Part 1 theory and hazard perception test.
So if we can go back to Part 1,
Sure.
What was your preparation like for that?
Part 1 was pretty simple, to be honest. So I got the material and I just spent the whole of Christmas looking through that material, doing mock test after mock test after mock test. I didn't score great, I'll be honest with you. I just scraped the hazard perception, but the actual questions, I think I scored a 96 on it, so that wasn't too bad. But the actual preparation, it was all the highway code, driving the essential skills, and the app. I just went over it over and over and over again until I couldn't get less than 100%. I was hitting 100% on all the mock tests, and I thought, okay, I've got to be ready for it. And I'm a bit of a have-a-go kind of person, so I thought, all right, I'm ready. Let's just give it a go and see what happens.
Okay, by his own admission, Miz just managed to scrape through Part 1. He only used a couple of resources to help him prepare. Personally, I would advise you to use a few more, including online resources such as our Part 1 online training course. The important thing, though, is that Miz took the commitment to make sure he passed numerous mock tests using an app before going down and sitting the real thing. And that's what you should do for yourself as well. Next, Miz tells us how he prepared for his Part 2 and passed first time.
So we'll move on to your Part 2. Was that the same? You prepared? How was your preparation for that? Was that on your own? Was that, let's go for that Part 2?
Yeah, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. It's not for everyone. No. It's not for everyone. And I might sound quite blasé about it all, but it's not that I just did 1 or 2 hours of driving or practice after getting advice from Roland. I would say, people say 10 hours of part 2 practice. I think I must have done about 100 hours of part 2 practice, just because I just wanted to cement it into my mindset that this is all that I'm focusing on. Yes, I don't have somebody by my side telling me this is what I'm doing wrong, but I'd done the research, I'd done the reading, I'd watched the videos. Yeah, it was just the research. It was just putting in that effort and doing the research. And I think if you do that, you're going to be successful. If you try and do a part 2 thinking, yeah, I'm a driver, I've driven for 30 years, and I don't need any practice, then yeah, I'd say, err on the side of caution, and maybe think about a little bit more research and practice before jumping into it.
Okay, I think what Ms. said there is incredibly important. Most ADI training courses sold by driving schools will include somewhere between maybe 8 to 12 hours of practical in-car training, and they make it sound like that's almost all you need in order to prepare for and pass your Part 2 test. Unfortunately, though, that's not the case, unless you already have an advanced driving qualification. If you don't, though, you're going to need to put in an awful lot more effort than 8 to 12 hours. Now, Ms. said he put in around about 100 hours of private practice to take his driving up to Part 2 test standard. Personally, I think you can get there an awful lot quicker than that without cutting corners, especially if you use online training support. Now, let's find out how Ms. dealt with Part 3.
Nice. Well, that's linked us quite nicely to the next stage that I'm sure most people that are watching this are wanting to hear about, because we've done the Part 2 in your preparation, and now we will discuss your Part 3. How was that? Let's go from the beginning. What made you decide to take the route that you did and get for a Part 3? But how was that?
If anybody thinks that because they're a good driver, they're going to be a good instructor, they've got another thing coming. They really have. And it's not to scare people off. It's not to scare people off, but it's to make them understand that everything that we've learned in Part 1 and Part 2 comes together in order for you to be able to apply that and impart that knowledge to somebody else now. And it's the imparting part that I had no idea about. Yeah, okay, I understand the theory, I know the highway code, I know how to drive, but now how do I teach Josh how to drive? I have no idea. So that was a scary thought. That was a real scary thought. And a lot of the comments and posts that I saw online were steering people, or from what I read, steering people away from the bigger schools. So I'm sort of now stuck in two minds. Do I sort of not listen to that advice and just go for one of the big schools because it's an all-in-one package? It's nice. It's marketed very well, let's say. And I thought to myself, yeah, it's an easy route. Can't be that difficult, right? Pay the money, do the training, and off we go, kind of thing. And I thought to myself, okay, that sounds so easy. All I've done was a Part 1, a Part 2, and he's going to show me what to do for 40 hours in terms of these subject matters. Then I'm free to go out and teach people for money. So why do I need to go through this whole qualifying process? Everybody can become a driving instructor then. And that didn't sit well with me, in all honesty. It didn't sit well with me because I thought, no, these 40 hours are not going to be enough for me to become a teacher. People go do their PGCE at university for, a year to become a teacher and then go on teacher training and all that kind of stuff to become a school teacher, right? So surely, in a similar vein, we have to have more training. So I went home, researched it, and that's where I came across you, Josh. And your story about no pink badge. And I'm like, no trainee license, and he's managed to become an ADI. So it is possible, and it's not necessary to go on a training.
Again, Miz makes some great points here. He is explaining how a conversation with an audit registered trainer gave him the information that all he needed was 40 hours of Part 3 training, which would be a mix between in-car and classroom or online, in order to get a trainee license. But he didn't think that that was personally a good idea for him, and I totally agree with him. A trainee license can be a great option for many, but it's certainly not right for all. And again, that's where online training comes into its own, because unlike traditional forms of in-car based or classroom based training, where you only get one opportunity to learn, with online training, you can revisit and rewatch that training as many times as you need. Now, let's find out from Miz how he started teaching students and some of the challenges he faced.
Now came my issue. Where do I get students from? Can't take payment from students. Is anybody going to give me a student for free? Or if I put it out there that I'm teaching for free, I might get inundated with people that maybe aren't serious or maybe won't. Because of the way I'm committed to something, I'd want somebody committed just the same kind of thing, even though it was free. I didn't go out with anybody. I didn't have a trainer that ever sat in the back of my car, or I never ever went and sat in with an ADI, local ADI. I did reach out. I think after we spoke at that point, you said to me, reach out to some of your ADIs in the locality, and I did. And out of the 15, 20 that I contacted, not one wanted me to come and sit in their car, which in hindsight is maybe a shame, because I think you've identified this and you've spoken about this before. I think it's invaluable. It is, especially if you get a good ADI, you're going to learn a hell of a lot from those sessions. And for somebody that's never taught, forget about teaching as a teacher, but, you know, I heard somebody say this in another video, you're teaching in the fastest moving classroom in the world. And, you know, you have to be ready and active and able to respond and deal with what the pupil's going to do. And if you don't have that experience of being in a vehicle with an ADI or with a trainer, I would say it's going to hinder you.
Again, some brilliant points from Miz, but respectfully, I'm going to disagree with him on a couple of them. I totally get where he's coming from in terms of how he felt if he would have advertised his availability to give free lessons. Would that have attracted the wrong type of students? And he wanted somebody that was going to meet and match his level of commitment, which is totally understandable. So I know for a fact, if you put your message out there that you're training to be a driving instructor and you're available to give free lessons, then it won't be hard to find maybe 3 or 4 that absolutely meet your criteria, you get on with, you can have a great relationship with, and you can start helping them to drive and also develop your own teaching skills at the same time. And the second point that I'm going to disagree with, which Miz made, was teaching in the fastest classroom in the world, because that simply shouldn't be happening, albeit I get his point. You shouldn't teach students fundamentally whilst the car is moving. You should teach them when the car is stationary, you're sat at the side of the road, and then you put that teaching into practice on the move. I know it's a subtle difference, but I think it's an important one. And then finally, let's have a look at how Miz started to really focus in on his Part 3 test and how his preparation helped him, again, to pass that on the first attempt.
But I then started to focus on the Part 3 and start focusing on the structure of the Part 3. How am I going to hit the competencies? I started focusing on skills, and I stopped thinking about the competencies. And I thought, no, I need to teach them these skills. Without these skills, I'm not going to be able to get those competencies out of me in order to be able to pass Part 3. And that's what I started doing. I started teaching skills. Obviously, went for my Part 3 a week later, and thankfully passed. Sorry, that was a lot of me talking, Josh. I like to ramble.
This is what I'm here for. I just sit, listen, you tell your story, and I get to upload it at some point. But that's fascinating. Your part 3, we've got you training for it, and I've got a few thoughts that I'd like to discuss shortly. But how was your part 3? How did you find it?
Excellent. In all fairness, my part 2 and my part 3, from a test point of view, the examiner, both examiners were fantastic. Really, really nice examiners. I tell this to all my pupils as a story, and I say to them, look, don't fear the examiner. Do not fear the examiner. They're not there to fail you. They don't come out with a fail sheet. They come out with a pass sheet. Yeah, so don't worry about it. Lovely examiners, excellent feedback, really positive feedback. Part 3 in particular, my part 3 examiner, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He gave me some real valuable, in-depth feedback. I didn't score a high score, but I passed. But I think everything that he's told me and what you guys have all told me, I'm just continually applying it in all my lessons. It's not something that I'm going to forget, or it's not something that's going to go out of date, right? So we continue to apply that same knowledge and try and increase our skill set as an instructor on a day-to-day basis.
But now for me, I think this is one of the most important points that Ms. has made. Don't think about the 17 competencies when preparing for your Part 3 test. Instead, focus on your core teaching skills, which I refer to as discovery, clarity, and practice. And if you take our Part 3 online training course, you'll learn how to easily learn those skills for yourself, put them into practice for yourself, and massively improve your chances of passing your Part 3 test first time. Okay, so let's just wrap things up with a few key takeaways. First of all, don't think you're going to be able to necessarily pass your ADI exams within 6 weeks like Ms. did. He is an exceptional case, and he worked incredibly hard to do that. And I'm not saying that you won't work incredibly hard as well, but let's be realistic. For most people, it takes, as I said before, between 8 to 18 months. So go in with that expectation. Like Ms, you don't need to join a driving school to get training, support, and pass your ADI exams. And you can use online training, such as with AAT, to either offer you an alternative to training with a driving school, or if you're already training with them or decide to go down that route, to give you additional support and resources. So I appreciate I've included a lot of information in this video, and there are numerous links that you may want to check out, which are all included in the description of this video below. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and please don't forget to subscribe both to our channel but also the Mirror Signal podcast. Thanks again, and I'll see you again soon.